Compare a supermarket chicken with a chicken from grandma's backyard. One grew up under a lamp in a cage with 20 other birds, fed industrial feed with more chemicals than grain. The other grew up under the sun, kicking up dust, with eyes that sparkle like amber. The first costs 100 rubles a kilo. The second is priceless because it holds memory. In years when the city froze, the village provided food. That's how it was during the siege, in the hungry year of 1947, and in the dry year of 1963, when collective farms received orders to save breeding stock at all costs. Back then, every family kept at least a couple of chickens, living bred, as they call them in Poltavshchina. In Belarus, they were called progenitors of gardens. In Kazakhstan, on the outskirts of Semi, people still remember how women boiled barley grist and fed it to poultry when everything else went to the front. These backyard birds survived everything: Germans, reforms, and the market frenzy of the 90s. Because there were no refrigerators, but there was a roost. There was no industrial feed, but there was wisdom. The chicken coop stood next to the barn as part of a living ecosystem. There was order developed over generations. Grain was dried in the attic. Eggshells were not thrown away. They were crushed, and the chickens ate their own past, turning it into the future. Nobody said organic back then because there was simply no other way. Now it's a different era. Industry promised convenience, saying, "We will feed everyone." And for a time, it really did. But at what price? In 2024, feed analysis showed that, on average, industrial mixtures contain up to 40% fillers: oilseed meals, bone meal, synthetic amino acids. Lysine is artificial, methionine from petroleum products, vitamin D3 not from the sun, but from a lab. Chickens grow fast, but their immune system is weakened. They breathe through dust from their own feathers, and antibiotics have become part of their diet like salt. All for the sake of a standard for an identical egg, identical taste, identical consumer. But nature doesn't tolerate copies. And here's the paradox: the more technology in the feed, the less life in the egg. A store-bought egg glows under a lamp like plastic. An egg from a backyard chicken is dense, smells of the field, with an amber-colored yolk. This isn't romance, it's biochemistry. Carotenoids, which give the yolk its rich color, are synthesized only with free-range feeding, from greens, nettles, carrot tops. Labs can't reproduce them in a living form. Lecithin, the main source of energy for the brain and liver, is 1.5 times higher in natural eggs, and cholesterol is lower, contrary to myths. This is where the debunking lies. Industrial standards displace not dirt, but meaning. When I first started making feed myself, friends laughed. Why bother when everything has already been invented? But science is on the side of the village. A chicken is not a machine, but a biochemical organism. Its stomach is a microcosm of fermentation, where the balance of carbohydrates, proteins, and minerals decides everything. It needs 16 amino acids, without which egg protein cannot be formed. 11 of them are synthesized only with natural feeding. When a chicken eats fresh oats, its body itself produces enzymes for calcium absorption. No factory premix can do that. This is the secret to the resilience of old backyard breeds. Kuchinskaya Jubilee, Pestryanka, Orlovskaya. They survived not because they were productive, but because they were adaptable. Why did this knowledge disappear? Because it cannot be patented. Nature does not obey a license. Large corporations cannot make money on a simple recipe: grain, sun, water. They need to sell an additive, a norm, a certificate. That's how the myth of impossible homemade feed was born. But the truth is different. As long as we mix the grain ourselves, we are free. Free from dependence, from prices, from middlemen. With every bucket you mix in your yard, you reclaim a piece of autonomy. If you want to start, just start simply. Take half corn, half wheat, a little barley, add some nettle, dried in the attic. Mix it in a bucket without fanaticism. Let your chickens tell you if they like it. They will show it first. Listen to them. A chicken is smarter than it seems. And remember, knowledge survives only when it is passed on. What grandma did by feel, we can now explain with a formula. But the meaning is the same. Life supports life, and the next vault will open soon. If someone had told my great-grandmother in 1953 that chicken feed would one day be sold in plastic bags at the price of sugar, she would have just grunted. That's not feed, that's fake. Back then, every village lived by its own rhythm. In the Chernihiv region, chickens pecked at leftover oats after the horses. In Transnistria, they were given whey from cottage cheese. And in southern Kazakhstan, women dried watermelons and mixed them into feed so the birds wouldn't lose their appetite in the heat. Everything was thought out because it depended on the weather, on the hand, on the land. In every yard there was a tub with a grain mixture, grist which was ground right in the barn. People knew a good egg starts with good grist. Back then, they didn't say organic farming, they said our own way. And that our own way fed an entire generation. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, all this disappeared like water into sand. It was replaced by bags labeled PK1, PK4. The deciphering is simple: compound feed, formula, diet for any region. But chickens in Baranovichi and chickens in Almaty live under different suns, on different water, and eat different grass. They can't have the same thing. However, industry needs to standardize. That way, it's easier to calculate profits, easier to import raw materials. And where living things are standardized, degradation begins. Today, many people wonder why store-bought chicken loses its taste. The answer is simple and terrifying. Because its body lacks the trace elements that make meat, magnesium, zinc, selenium. These three elements directly affect taste and eggshell strength. In industrial feed, they are replaced by chemical analogs, but the bird's body absorbs them only by 30–40%. But when you yourself give ground barley, a little fish meal, and dried nettle, these same elements are absorbed up to 80%. This is not theory, it's physiology. A chicken, like a human, runs on biochemistry, not marketing. The secret to a backyard bird's health is simple: variety. In Soviet poultry farming manuals from 1972, it was directly stated, the optimal diet for laying hens is a mixture of carbohydrate, protein, and mineral feeds in a ratio of 60–25–15. Today's farmers are rediscovering these figures like an ancient scroll. Why? Because as recent studies have shown, it is with such a balance that a chicken's body produces the maximum amount of lipase and protease enzymes, the very ones responsible for protein absorption. Without them, a chicken eats, but doesn't live. Try the following trick, proven for generations. Take a liter jar of crushed corn, half a liter of wheat, and a glass of oats. Soak everything in warm water overnight. During this time, the grain wakes up, the vitamin E level increases threefold, and enzyme activity increases by 60%. In the morning, dry it slightly and give it to the chickens. You will see how they will peck every last grain because they sense life. This is true bioavailability, something that cannot be packaged in cellophane. Someone will say, but industrial feed is balanced. Yes, it's balanced according to a table, but the table doesn't know if you have heat or fog, if the grass grows more acidic, or if the well water's hard. But the chicken knows it seeks out the necessary mineral itself, as if it hears with its body. When we mix feed by hand, we adapt to the specific reality, to the village, the yard, the weather. This is the forgotten science of locality. In the 1980s, there was a program in Ukraine called Kolosok. Scientists traveled through villages and recorded recipes for homemade feed, because these methods save poultry during periods of scarcity. Recipes with added crushed shells, bone ash, and dried onions have been preserved in the archives. Onions, it turned out, reduce the risk of parasites in chickens by 40%. And ash is a source of calcium and potassium. But with the advent of the market era, this knowledge was considered unscientific, and mistakenly so. Let's delve deeper into biology. A chicken egg consists of 65% water, 12% protein, 11% fat, and approximately 1% minerals. To produce one egg, a chicken needs 2 g of calcium, 0.5 g of phosphorus, and 0.1 g of magnesium. This means that without daily access to a mineral source, the bird robs its own bones. Hence soft shells and leg problems. The solution is elementary. Dry the shells, grind them, and add a tablespoon per kilogram of feed. It's free and it works. The protein story is more interesting. Protein is not just meat. Protein is soy, sunflower, clover, alfalfa. But it is the animal amino acid chain that makes protein complete. In ancient times, chickens were fed boiled fish waste, and this was not a whim, but knowledge. Fish meal contains lysine and methionine in their natural form. When they are absent, egg laying decreases and feathers become dull. It can be replaced with sunflower seeds, but remember, they are fatty, no more than 15% of the diet. For vitamins A and K, add dried carrots and nettle. Nettle is truly a wonder plant. Just 50 g of dried nettle provides the daily norm of vitamin K for a dozen chickens, strengthening blood vessels and enhancing yolk color. But there is another enemy that few people talk about: milling. When feed is ground into powder, it loses enzymatic activity. The bird pecks but does not digest. Fine dust clogs the crop, and vitamins are destroyed by contact with air. Therefore, the best option is coarse grinding. The grain should be palpable in the fingers. This is what old housewives knew when they ground grist on a hand mill. The secret is not in technology, but in texture. And now a little economics. Homemade feed costs 30 to 40% less than factory feed, but the benefit is not just in rubles. When you buy grain in sacks and store it in a dry shed, you control the quality. You have no middlemen, no mysterious origin of the protein additive. You see the grain, touch it with your hands, smell it. This is true certification, human. Industry, however, is built on the opposite. Its strength is independence. Today on the shelves, you see beautiful packaging, and inside is a mixture of meal, chalk, and residual fat. Why is that? Because grain cannot be patented, but the shape of a granule can. The system patents the appearance to hold the market. Thus, grain turns into a commodity and knowledge into a secret. But secrets are not eternal. All we need is to return to observation. Watch how chickens behave in the morning. If their feathers shine, there's enough protein. If they stand hunched, low on energy. If the shell is fragile, not enough calcium. It's simple. Nature speaks if you know how to listen. My grandfather used to say, "A chicken is the thermometer of the yard. When things are in order on the farm, she lays. When something is wrong, she's silent." And if you want to understand what's happening in your yard, look in the feeder. Everything is written there. The knowledge of our ancestors is not the past. It is an instruction for the future. We are not going back. We are reclaiming meaning because freedom begins with something simple. To take a handful of grain and understand that independence is hidden precisely within it. This is the beginning of the path to autonomy, and the next vault will open soon. You know what amazes me most when I look at old photographs of village yards from the 50s? Every yard had not just a chicken coop. It was a small life support center. Everything was connected. Ash from the stove went into the ash pit where chickens bathed, destroying feather parasites. Oat husks into the bedding then into the garden beds. And on these beds grew the very nettle and alfalfa that were dried for winter feed. A closed cycle. No waste, no biotechnologies, just man and nature in one exchange system. Today we need to remember this again, not out of nostalgia, but out of necessity. Because the earth has become impoverished, the climate is erratic, and feed prices are rising faster than gasoline. But we have an advantage that factories have forgotten. We can adapt to each morning. In this video, I want not just to inspire, but to arm you with knowledge. Real, proven, with numbers, with science, but without academic boredom. Let's start with the understanding that a chicken is a biochemical reactor, designed to process coarse plant raw materials. A special system works in its body, the muscular stomach or gizzard. In it, small stones and sand grind grain like millstones. Therefore, if you want your chickens to assimilate feed 100%, provide them with access to fine gravel or sand. Without it, the grain simply passes through in transit. In Soviet poultry brochures, this was called the digestive key, and it was not an image, but an accurate definition. You can't open a lock without a key. The second important aspect is water, often underestimated. A chicken is 70% water, and it is water that triggers all metabolic processes. In hot weather, a bird loses up to 10% of its moisture per day. If the water is warmer than 30 degrees C, it stops drinking. Therefore, in the summer season, place drinkers in the shade, or even better, in clay bowls. Clay keeps cool and neutralizes excessive acidity. In Central Asia, they still use sufsaks, clay drinkers smeared with straw so that evaporating moisture cools the water. This is not just beautiful, it is the science of thermoregulation, practiced for centuries. Now about vitamins. Many are surprised that chickens walking in the sun lay brighter eggs. This is not a myth. Under the influence of ultraviolet light, vitamin D3 is synthesized in their skin, which regulates calcium absorption. If a bird sits under a lamp, it receives only 10 to 15% of the norm of this vitamin. Therefore, a simple walk in the yard in the mornings is the best prevention of osteoporosis in chickens. Scientific data confirm, with 2 hours of sunlight per day, shell strength increases by 25%. Proteins. In the village, dairy product leftovers were never thrown away. Sour milk, skim milk, even cottage cheese whey, these are ready-made protein cocktails. 1 mug of sour whey replaces 30 growers of expensive protein concentrate. You can pour it over crushed grain. This will result in natural fermentation, rich in lactobacilli. Such enzymes suppress putrefactive bacteria in the intestine and increase protein absorption almost twofold. I call it the village probiotic. Another forgotten practice is sprouted grain. In collective farms during winter, it was called green fodder. Oats or wheat were soaked in a box, kept warm for 3 or 4 days. As soon as a centimeter-long sprout appeared, the grain became a vitamin bomb. Vitamin E increased threefold. Vitamin C, fivefold. A chicken needs only 20-30 gras of such feed per day to maintain immunity in winter. I do this in a regular basin. Pour warm water, cover with burlap. In a couple of days, everything turns green. And you know this grain smells like spring. Many ask, what about supplements? Should I buy premixes? I'll be honest. If you feed naturally, premixes are not needed. They were invented to compensate for sterile diets. But there are natural analogs for iron, beets and dried apples, for sulfur, cabbage and onions, for iodine, a little sea salt or kelp. Kelp, by the way, enhances yolk color and strengthens feathers. A teaspoon per kilogram of feed once a week is enough. Another important element is fatty acids. Without them, a chicken loses feather shine and energy. Industrial feeds add animal fat, often of not the best quality. We can replace it with flax or sunflower seeds. Flax is the champion of omega-3. If you give 5% flaxseed by weight of the feed, the eggs become enriched with omega-3 fatty acids, beneficial for humans too. This is not just marketing. Analysis shows the content of alpha-linolenic acid increases threefold. Now a little about culinary alchemy for chickens. In ancient times, there was a technique called steaming. In huge buckets, a mixture of grist and vegetable peels was steeped in boiling water for a couple of hours. Then it cooled, becoming soft and fragrant. Such feed is easier to digest, especially in winter, when cold slows down enzymes. I've tried it. If you add grated carrots and cabbage to the steam mixture, egg production increases in just a week, because warm food speeds up metabolism and activates internal bacteria as if turning on a stove. And now about herbs. Pharmacies underfoot. Our ancestors knew each one by its action. Wormwood, anti-parasitic. They smoked the chicken coop with it and mixed it into feed once a month. Dandelion, a source of vitamin K and iron. Nettle, a universal booster. Yarrow and calendula, for feathers and yolk color. Calendula, by the way, is a natural pigment. It is even added to organic feeds in Europe. And here it grows along the road. And don't forget about vinegar. Ordinary apple cider vinegar is another old secret. A couple of spoons per liter of water once a week supports intestinal microflora and reduces the level of pathogenic bacteria. Scientists have proven acid stimulates the production of gastric juice and aids in calcium absorption. Our grandmothers didn't know this in terms, but they knew it by feel. The chicken drinks vinegary water, the egg is stronger. But perhaps the most important thing is observation. The chicken itself tells you what it lacks. If it pecks the ground, it's looking for minerals. If it pecks feathers, it lacks sulfur or protein. If it scatters feed, something is not to its taste. This is the art of home feeding. to hear the living. After all, a chicken does not stay silent. It speaks with its body, its eyes, its sounds. You just need to be attentive. Now about storage. The most common mistake for beginners is to keep feed in bags on the floor. That way you invite moisture and mice. Ideally in a plastic barrel with a tight lid, standing on a stand. Temperature no higher than 20 degrees, humidity up to 60%. Check once a week. The smell should be fresh, slightly sweet, without signs of mold. If a sour aroma appears, the feed is spoiled and should not be given. Even if it's a pity, mycotoxins formed during mold cause liver inflammation and a drop in egg production in birds. Some will say, too complicated. But it's not. It's complicated when you depend on a factory, when every price increase forces you to save on the bird's health. But mixing feed yourself is like baking bread. Unfamiliar at first, then a pleasure. Because you know that every handful, every spoonful is from your hands, from your land. Don't be afraid to experiment. The chicken will choose what it needs itself. Try adding bran, a little boiled potato, pumpkin, zucchini. All of these are cheap sources of energy and vitamins. And if you want to boost the flock's immunity, once a week add a little crushed garlic or dry oregano to the feed. This is a natural antibiotic recognized in veterinary medicine. This way, we bring back to life the ancient science our grandmothers possessed. They didn't have laboratories, but they had eyes and hands, and their knowledge saved lives during droughts, wars, and changes. Today, we can combine that knowledge with modern science and create a system where every chicken is not just alive, but healthy. We live in an era when autonomy is not a luxury, but a necessity. When the city can stop, but the chicken coop will continue to work, because life always begins simply, with grain, water, and light. And if you've watched up to this point, you are already part of those who are restoring meaning to farming, because knowledge survives only when it is passed on, and the next vault's already on its way. When we talk about homemade feeding, it's important to understand it's not just about saving money, it's about restoring the lost ecology of the yard. After all, a real chicken coop is not an isolated cage, but a miniature biosystem. Everything in it is connected: food, soil, light, movement, air. If one element is removed, the balance collapses. And this is exactly what industrial farms have done. They took the chicken out of the yard, out of the ground, deprived it of the ability to choose, peck, dig, search. And with that, the very culture of observation disappeared. Today we are bringing it back, grain by grain. Look at the statistics. According to agricultural institutes, over the last 20 years, the productivity of factory crossbreds has increased by 35%, but their average lifespan has halved. This is the price of acceleration. A homemade chicken, raised on natural feed, lives 5 to 7 years, maintaining egg production almost until the last season. Why? It's simple. Its body is not worn out by the constant race for results. It has a natural recovery system, one that is nourished not by pills, but by minerals and light. Now about minerals. Without them, there are neither strong bones nor quality eggs. We have already talked about calcium, but there is also phosphorus, zinc, and manganese. Phosphorus is responsible for energy metabolism and the transmission of nerve impulses, especially important for young laying hens. It can be obtained from crushed bones, but it is simpler and safer from calcined bone ash. Collect bones after boiling, dry them, grind them, and then burn them in a furnace until white. This will produce ash rich in phosphates, a real natural premix. Zinc is found in pumpkin seeds, manganese in buckwheat. Many are surprised that a simple addition of ash can change a bird's behavior. But it's a fact. With regular addition of ash, chickens become more active, pluck feathers less often, and cannibalism decreases. In ancient times, there was even a saying, "Whoever gives ash to a chicken takes away its anger." Science confirms potassium and calcium regulate the acid-base balance of the blood, and therefore the level of stress. Now let's discuss an important aspect: seasonal feeding. Our climate is capricious. Summers are hot, winters are long, springs are muddy, autumns are wet, and feed must live with the season. In summer, the base, light grains and greens. This includes wheat, oats, less corn, Lots of herbs, lamb's quarters, dandelion, plantain. These herbs can be dried in the shade and then added in winter. In autumn, more carbohydrates to prepare the birds for the cold. Barley, corn, boiled potatoes. In winter, warm zaparka, a little fat, seeds, bran, oatmeal. In spring, vitamins, sprouts, and calcium to restore strength after winter and prepare for laying. An old Ukrainian practice was called sitsivaya kasha, a mixture of grist, warm milk, grated beets, and cabbage. It was given in the mornings during frosts. They said that after it, chickens sang songs. And indeed, milk protein and beet sugar support energy, and cabbage adds fiber. This is not folklore, but an accurate calculation of nutrients. Now let's look inside an egg. Literally, the yolk is a concentrate of everything the chicken eats. If the feed contains enough carotenoids, carrots, calendula, nettle, corn, the yolk will be bright orange. If the diet is poor, the color will be pale. And here's what's interesting. A rich yolk color is directly related to the level of antioxidants, particularly lutein. Lutein protects vision, improves metabolism, and in birds, increases resistance to stress. Therefore, when we care about the yolk color, we care about the health of the bird itself. In old poultry handbooks, you can find a recipe for a vitamin puree for autumn: boiled pumpkin, carrots, bran, and a spoonful of sunflower oil. Today, we call this a nutritional enhancer, but back then it was simply time to feed them something tasty, and it worked. And now let's analyze why industry displaced this knowledge. It's all about the economy of scale. When a poultry farm feeds 100,000 birds, it's more profitable to work by mathematics than by intuition. Science turns into a tool of control, not care. They need the chicken to grow quickly and uniformly, for the egg to be standardized in weight and color. But in this system, there is no place for individuality, no place for the earth. Therefore, when you return to your own feed, you return the bird its personality. That's why old breeds, Kuchinskaya, Zagorskaya, Adler Silver, are becoming popular again among private owners. These chickens don't require antibiotics, don't get sick from drafts, and thrive on a simple diet. They have a genetic memory to eat what grows underfoot. They have a code of resilience. And our task is not to let this code disappear. Let's delve into the microworld. The chicken's intestine is home to up to 10 billion beneficial bacteria. They break down fiber, produce B vitamins, and regulate immunity. But factory feeds with antibiotics kill this microflora. Without it, the bird becomes dependent on external stimulators. When you feed naturally, you don't just provide food, you restore an entire ecosystem in its body. This explains the phenomenon. Chickens on homemade feed get sick less often, even without vaccination. Nature heals itself if not interfered with. Now for specific proportions. For a flock of 10 laying hens, the average consumption is about 1 kilo of feed per day. This means 7 kilograms of mixture is needed for a week. Proportions: 40% corn, 30% wheat, 15% barley, 10% sunflower meal, and 5% calcium supplement, shells, chalk, ash. Once a week, add a handful of sprouted grain per bird, and in winter, every 3 days, a steamed mixture, zaparka, of grist with vegetables. That's all. Simple math, but the effect is like a premium diet. And remember about air, the chicken coop must breathe. Ammonia is the main enemy of bird health. Its level increases when humidity is above 70%. Dry bedding is the best remedy. You can use sawdust, but straw cutting is better. It retains heat and composts naturally. Once a week, add a fresh layer and you will get a natural warm floor. There is another detail that is rarely discussed: the light regime. A chicken lays only in light. The optimum is 14 or 16 hours of illumination per day. But it's important that the light is soft, warm, without flickering. In ancient times, lamps with reflectors made of foil or copper plates were used for this purpose. This is not just aesthetics. Copper reflects infrared heat and disinfects the air. Today you can use LED lamps with a warm spectrum, 2700, 3000 K, but turn them on gradually so as not to stress the bird. And do you know why all this is important? Because the health of a chicken is a mirror of a human. The more naturally it lives, the healthier our own home becomes. By feeding it grain, we also feed ourselves through the egg, through the meat, through the air it purifies by digging in the ground and returning life to it. And here's the philosophy. Feed is not just food. It is a language of communication between us and nature. And the simpler this language, the deeper the understanding. When you mix feed with your hands, you literally touch the cycle of life. And from this touch, independence begins. We can build a future where every yard becomes a small laboratory of life, where there will be no dependence on the factory, but trust in the land. After all, knowledge survives only when it is passed on not through the internet, but through a hand, a gesture, a glance, the smell of fresh grain. And if you feel this, it means you have already opened the way to the next vault. When I first realized that chickens could be philosophers, I found it funny, but then I started observing. They live by a rhythm that we humans have lost. In the morning, sun and grain. In the day, searching. In the evening, socializing and peace. No rush, no ambitions, no stress. Their world is a miniature of a proper farm where everything has meaning. And the closer we return to this natural order, the cleaner life itself becomes. That's why homemade feed is not just a matter of nutrition, but a matter of worldview. But let's get back to business. Now I want to give you the maximum set of knowledge so that you can fully switch to autonomous feeding without losing productivity and the health of your birds. Let's start with a basic fact. A chicken is an omnivorous creature. This means that it should receive both plant and animal food. Its body is arranged differently. It has no teeth, and all processing takes place in the crop and muscular stomach. Therefore, it is important not only what to give, but also in what form. Protein part of the diet. The best sources are seeds, fish, dairy waste, boiled eggs, your own crushed ones, and greens. Fish meal must be fresh, without a muddy smell. Do not give salted fish. Sodium disrupts the potassium balance, and chickens start drinking too much water, overloading their kidneys. The optimum is 3D or 4% fish meal by weight of the feed. Dairy waste, skim milk, sour milk, kefir, contains casein and lactic acid, which improves the absorption of phosphorus and iron. The main thing is not to overdo it so as not to cause fermentation. Plant proteins. Alfalfa and clover are champions in amino acids. Dry alfalfa can be ground into powder and mixed into feed. Just 50 grain per bird per day covers the need for vitamins A and E. If you want to boost immunity, add garlic and onions. Natural antiseptics. Carbohydrates and energy. Corn, wheat, barley, oats, the 4 pillars of the diet. Corn provides calories, maximum 40%. Wheat is rich in B vitamins. Barley improves intestinal function. Oats are indispensable during molting. A grain mix with ash and sand for 10 kilos of feed, 200 grams of ash, and 300 grams of sand cleans the stomach. Greens are the best vitamin supplement. Nettle, dandelion, clover, beet tops. All of this can be dried and stored. Pumpkin, a source of carotene, and seeds, zinc, make feathers glossy. Carrots and calendula give a rich yolk color. Remember, the intestine is the main immune organ. Prophylaxis with garlic infusion and apple cider vinegar strengthens it. Economically, switching to your own diet reduces costs by 35–50%, and the quality of eggs increases so much that people immediately feel the difference. This is the path to independence. If you can feed a chicken correctly, you can feed your family. Start today. Take a bucket, grain, and mix your first feed. From this moment on, you become part of a system living by the law of life. If this story changed your view on ordinary backyard birds and the importance of natural farming, subscribe to our channel and hit like. We continue to unearth history and knowledge that they tried to consign to oblivion. Sow the future with us, reclaiming autonomy and meaning. The next vault will open very soon.